Just good evening, everyone. We have a few people walking in from the parking lot, so we're gonna give them an opportunity to come in. So we'll be starting in a couple of minutes, so please be patient with us. We realize it's a very warm day today. One thing we can offer you, it's a little bit cooler in here. So thank you.
Well, welcome and good evening, everyone. Just to let you know, we're going to be starting in just 1 minute. There's still some people in the parking lot coming our way. So we'll start with a presentation in just a couple moments. Thanks for coming.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We'll get going now. My name is Jamie Rabbit. I'm the Director of Planning for the town of South Kingstown. I'd like to welcome you here tonight on this very steamy, warm day. Hopefully it's a little bit cooler here. Our program tonight is pretty much scheduled for 6:30 to 8:30. Our staff, as well as our consultant, will stay here a little bit longer if there's some more questions or you would just like to speak with us. I'd like to, again, warm welcome to you. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedules to come for what I think is a very exciting project that we'd like to move forward to. I'd like to recognize a few people who, members are in the room tonight. We have members of the Planning Board. We have some members and former members of the Economic Development Committee, Affordable Housing Collaborative, Historic District Commission. We also have 2 members of the Town Council here, Mike Marin and Patty Alley. If I missed another council member, I apologize, but I saw Mike and Patty come into the room. Again, very exciting project. We've been working on the Old Tower Hill Road neighborhood study for a little over a year. The first part of this was the first phase, an evaluation of the district, the neighborhood, and how we can move forward with the potential redevelopment of that area and how that area would redevelop. We retain the services of Able City East. Tonight we have with us Jason King and his wife, Pam Stacy King. They're both partners in Able City and Able City East, and they're going to do the majority of speaking tonight. I'm here as a resource on behalf of the municipality, but I really want to spend time with them to give you an opportunity to hear what we are, what's exciting about the project, how we intend to move forward over time, and what some of the next steps are. So Jason's going to do a presentation with the assistance of Pam. After the presentation's done, we're going to entertain maybe 4 or 5 questions that relate to the general scope of a form-based code, kind of on a global level, and then we'll separate from those questions and allow people to come up. There's some exercises they want you to partake in, and again, we'll be available for questions as well as our consulting team. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jason King from Able City East. And again, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, everybody. Let me ask, how many people in this room, this is their first presentation, this is their first interaction with our consultant team, this is the first time that you're really engaging this project? Can you just raise your hands? All right, good. So that's interesting, right? So half people in this room are new to this project. That's helpful. Well, our job is called the Old Tower Hill Road Form-Based Code and Public Draft. Our process tonight is we're going to talk a little bit about the code. Then, like Jamie said, we'll do a short Q&A. And then the most important part is the informal conversations that we'll have around these boards. So these boards are the code, with the exception of the administration section and the definition section. This is every page of the code, of the proposal, of the recommended changes to the zoning and the land development regulations to facilitate change in the Old Tower Hill Road area. So ideally, you'll be able to stick around, you'll be able to take a look at some of these pictures and we can explain them. Possibly even you can write concepts. We caught a typo. Feel free to write things down on the sticky notes and to place them on the boards. So our firm, just so that way you know about it, our firm is full planning and architecture, economic development, and community engagement. So Pam and I have been planners for a long time. I got my master's degree in community planning from the University of Rhode Island. So I lived here in South Kingston for about 7 years. We worked all over the country, we worked all over the world, and this is still one of our favorite places to be. It's a privilege to work in this area. Our goal is to revise the zoning ordinance to guide growth and development of the Tower Hill Road area. And then today, before we got started, so this is a picture of me and Pam and the kids. We're getting ice cream at Brickley's. You know, we walked across the little bridge behind the school. We're on Main Street in Wakefield. And you know, I was just we're looking around, and I was trying to explain to the kids what it is that we're doing here tonight. They're in the back on their headphones. They can't hear anything because that's our kids. But I was trying to explain what we're doing. Basically, you know, Main Street in Wakefield is just one supremely nice place. It's a whole mix of all kinds of different businesses and shops. It's a nice, walkable, safe street. Even on a very, very hot day, it's comfortable to sit outside and to be there. We've been coming here for a long time. We've gone to the Muse a million times. We're so happy to come to Duck Press. Wherever we can, we're in South Kingstown. And what I explained to the kids is that this thing that you have in the historic district, this thing from an urban planning perspective is called walkable urbanism. And there's not a lot of it in this country. In New England, we're lucky. There's a lot of historic places. But there isn't enough. If you really think about it, you know, from the Muse all the way up to where Main Street meets Kingstown Road, it's really a small kind of sliver of walkable urbanism. And this is a great historic district here. We just need more. We need more in South Kingstown. We need more in this country. Walkable urbanism. And that's what this code is about. This code is about converting at least portions of the Kingstown Road area, the Tower Hill Road area, converting it into something that looks and functions a little bit more like Main Street. That's how I would summarize our work that we're doing. So Pam's going to take us a little bit through the process, and then I'll tell you about the specifics of the code.
Hi, so I'm Pamela King, and we really appreciate you all coming and spending your Wednesday evening here with us, and happy to see so many new faces, but also happy to see ones that we've seen before. We really began engaging with a lot of this community back in March of 2024 when we were working on creating the report, really asking what is it that this town wants the Old Tower Hill neighborhood area to be. And so that's, like I mentioned, that started back in March, and now we're here. We've been going through that process, working with the community, and so now this is the code presentation, working on implementation of that plan. And so back in 2024, we had a whole week that we had brought our whole team here, economists and urban planners and people that do renderings, so that we could really see, like, what is it that you want, and try to show it and make sure that as we created the report and now creating the code, we were making it what this community wants it to be. So we spent a week over in the school. Our kids thought it was a little creepy because kids don't go to school there anymore, but we made it our home for a week, and we had many people come out, and we started the week by putting plans of that area, the area that we're talking about in Old Tower Hill Road, on the tables, and we asked, what do you want this to be? This is what it is now. You've got your Shaws, you've got a lot of parking, there's shopping here, but what ultimately do you want this part of your community to be? It can be more. And so through many different methods, we collected feedback. And so starting with those maps, people drew and wrote and noted what they wanted to have here: more connectivity, more uses, more green, more walkability, ability to get out of the car and not be afraid walking next to the roads. And so a little bit more about what we heard and ways that we gathered information. And then when we come back, when Jason comes back, he'll go through some more of those images of what we created to see if we were getting it right. So one of the things that we did is we were asking, what's one word that you think of now for Old Tower Hill Road, and what is it in the future? And people didn't hold back. It was yuck, and then they wanted it to not be so yucky. Another method, pulling all of those together. What is it now? It's uninviting. It's just a strip mall. It's parking lots. It's fast food, but it's busy. Ugly, kind of eyesore. It's not what you want to think about. It's not the area you think about when you think about South Kingstown. And so then what do people want it to be in the future? And so they wanted it to be mixed use, walkable, green, local, vibrant, looking at architecture design standards. They wanted it to be a place like downtown Wakefield and Peacedale where people want to get out of their cars, meet with their neighbors. We also had kind of a visual exercise. We call it an interactive dot exercise, where it had just a bunch of pictures and from all other places. And we're like, well, what is right for here? So we can start to get those visual cues of what do you want this part of your community to be like. And so very, just red and green dots, what's good, what's bad. And so you start to see, the red dots are kind of what you already have in the Old Tower Hill Road neighborhood area. You've got the big parking lots, you've got the big signage, you've got the larger stores, and you want the green dots are more those wider sidewalks, buildings brought up to the street. There's a lot of character in the buildings and green in the streets. We also had surveys. We read every single survey that we received. We made sure to incorporate that into our work and into the plans. We received over 120 handwritten surveys. And at the end of that week when we were here, we produced a lot of images. We had another presentation like this, and we said, are we getting it right? And so for the people that were there, 95% of the people said, yes, you're on the right track, keep going, with just 5% saying, well, maybe it's on the right track, I need more information. So that gave us the point to go ahead and put what we were working on into the Old Tower Hill Road neighborhood plan. And this is an award-winning plan, thanks to Planning Board Chair Maria Mack. This was submitted to the Rhode Island APA, and it won the award for excellence this past year. So, good job, everybody. And so what's in that plan? It really boils down to these 5 big ideas that are in the plan. Wanting the Old Tower Hill Road neighborhood area to be, for new development, to create great places. To plan a unique gateway experience into Wakefield and into South Kingstown. Design safe, comfortable, and interesting streets, because it's not just the buildings, it's the streets and the public spaces that have to work with the buildings to create that place that people want to actually be. Increase access to nature and build sustainably. There's a lot, the bike trail runs pretty close to the main intersection there, and there's a nice park to the north of that area, so working on connecting to those areas. Just like right here in downtown Wakefield, you've got the bridge across the river, and so you're connecting everything. And then unlock development potential and create new economic opportunities. And so from all these different ideas and descriptions that we have, at the end of the document, it boils down to goals, policies, and action items. And one of those very first ones is the reason that we're all here tonight, where it was the zoning that you currently had was not going to create the environment that the community want for that part of town. And so the update the zoning in the study area using form-based coding. And so that's why we're here today. We have the draft of that document. It's not complete. We know we want to hear from you. We want to hear your reactions. We want to make sure that we're still working with this town staff and the planning board to make sure that we're getting the details right. And so what is a form-based code? So form-based codes create a walkable public realm by regulating the form of buildings, streets, and public spaces. This is focusing more on the pedestrian and people that are walking than the car. It does not forget about the car. It knows we drive distances to get places, but it's trying to get you out of your car in one spot and visit maybe 3 places instead of just the parking right in front of the business you're trying to go to, and bring the community together more. Form-based codes are not a new concept. This is an image I'm going to show you from, this is Dorn Avenue where we're from. This was in 1990, a very car-oriented area. And like I said, the form-based code works a lot with the public realm. And so the buildings that are here are still the buildings that are here, but it was able to be transformed by changing the public realm, by working together. Some of those buildings had blank walls that now have windows and doors that come out onto this street now, and redoing the street to narrow it, widen the sidewalks, and so there's less space for cars, more space for people. And so then that brings people out, and they want to be outside and together enjoying meals. There's bikes, there's still the car, but it's a much more pleasant environment and place to be. This is also not just something that happens other places. This happens in New England, it happens in Rhode Island. These form-based codes have been adopted. Jason or myself have had a hand in several of these, the ones highlighted in red, throughout our careers. And I just wanted to highlight one, which is the one in Jamestown, Rhode Island. It was implemented in 2007, so it's been around for a while, and it's been able to have new mixed-use commercial come in under the code, as well as new residential. But it's not just new buildings, it's also using it to rehab existing buildings in order to enhance the public realm as well. And so now I'm going to bring Jason back up, and he's going to talk a little bit more about how the different pieces of the code create that environment you want.
So right now, the majority of the Old Tower Hill Road, Kingstown Road intersection, US 1 area, right now it has a zoning district called highway commercial, and it only allows one kind of building. It allows a commercial building, like a picture, a Taco Bell surrounded by parking, or larger, a job lot surrounded by parking. That's the only thing that's allowed in that district currently. So what a form-based code will do is it introduces new building types, and it mixes the building uses. So instead of large building types, this is an interesting diagram. Instead of large buildings, the red being retail and the yellow being office, what the form-based code does is it allows smaller buildings. It encourages a network of interconnected streets. It requires open space and centrally located greens. And so it actually has a transformative effect. When you drive down Old Tower Hill Road, you look, and the buildings, it looks like this area is filled. There's nothing left to do. What's the point in planning it, right? It's done. But what a form-based code does is it unlocks development potential by introducing these new building types, by allowing you to consolidate parking, sort of frees up space, by introducing new uses, like for instance housing, by letting property owners develop more of their site. You're able to go from places that look like this, right, to places that look like this. That's the idea. And places that look like this look a lot more like Main Street in downtown Wakefield. Places that look like this are walkable, pedestrian-friendly. It makes sense for transit to come. And it keeps places from becoming sort of what we're always afraid of, is places of big, huge buildings dying and being vacant for long periods. We're always afraid of these parking lots that are underutilized. We're unlocking development potential by changing the land development regulations. And in the code pages, you see pictures of a lot of different buildings. And this is the way the downtown was built, or historic areas. There's a variety of building types, and that allows for a variety of people to live there and a variety of different uses, different buildings to happen. So this is all new development. This is Baldwin Park in Orlando. This used to just be 5 big commercial buildings, and now it's a walkable mixed-use community with all variety of stuff. In the United States right now, we're talking about a need for housing. Housing is expensive. The median household income, or the median household price now is over $450,000, and in South Kingstown, it's $700,000. I don't know if you noticed, but people in South Kingstown in 1980, you'd buy a house. The median age for buying a house in South Kingstown in 1980 was 26. So imagine that. So you'd buy your first house at 26, right? Does anyone have any guess what it is now? How old is the average person when they buy their first house in South Kingstown? 52. Yeah, 45 in a lot of America. It's 52 here. And there's some great things about that. And to be honest, I don't want 95% of South Kingstown to change. My first job was the Richmond Preservation Trust. As a planner, I spent most of my career downzoning and protecting green space. That's what really drives me. But there are places like the Old Tower Hill Road area where I feel like you could get affordable housing. You can actually improve the character of it by adding to it. And by the way, if you build in areas like that, you're relieving the pressure to turn farms into subdivisions. You're relieving the pressure that nurseries feel to sell to gas stations and to fast food restaurants. You don't have a limitless population demand here. You can satisfy, you can imagine how many people are going to be here, or want to come here in the next 20 years, and we could house most of them in the South Kingstown area, in the Old Tower Hill Road area. Now, the form-based code, like Pam says, it prioritizes the pedestrian. So whether you're in downtown Nantucket or you're in Main Street USA and Disney World, the reason you're going to these vacation places is because singularly they are walkable environments. In other parts of the country, we talk about Austin's downtown or Park City, Utah. It's the same thing. It's prioritizing the pedestrian. Like Pam said, we're always going to be driving, but we're trying to make places for people to walk, and that's what the code is attempting to do. All right, so let's skip ahead. When we did the charrette, we asked people to sort of choose their future. We presented 3 different scenarios, which had 3 different levels of height, 3 different levels of traffic. Open space stayed the same, and we evaluated the income to the town, the municipal tax rolls, the property taxes generated and the sales tax generated. So there were 3 different options, and through a variety of conversations and dot placing, people liked the idea. They said no higher than 3 to 4 stories. And so that's what this code does. The largest area, the T5 area, is 3 to 4 stories. And this felt right because on Main Street in downtown Wakefield, there is this structure, right? There's the Sheldon Building and the Bell Block structure. And you know, had the world not gone from trains to cars, more of South Kingstown and more of this country would have looked like this. This was the direction things were headed between 1880 and 1920. This building doesn't feel too tall. This building has a mix of uses, right? There's offices, there's retail, there's restaurants on the bottom floor. In some spots, there's offices on the second floor. Then there's residential on the third, and then there's often residential in that third 3.5 story, that mansard roof story. The issue is, the thing about this historic district, and we talked to the owner of this structure, is that those upper stories are difficult to put people in now. These buildings are old. There is no closets. There's a lot of rotting wood. The cost of restoration is very high. So that's the thing. We just need to build more of this, like we once did. Pam did an illustrative master plan. She looked at Kingstown Road and Old Tower Hill Road, and she looked at the surrounding neighborhoods, and she looked at all the different opportunities for development. She's an architect by training. She works for developers on other projects in other places, and she said, how could this area reasonably change? what would be realistic. And she drew buildings that were in context. They were the same size as the buildings around them. You see just where you're sitting, and we have the illustrative master plan here. You see transformational change, a lot of new development. It would take many years for this to happen. And then in pretty much all the development that Pam drew includes, you see from where you're sitting, the green for open space, and you see long linear trails. You see the red for new buildings. These are perimeter buildings where the parking is handled in the back. You see a different kind of development, and all of this is pretty much illegal under the current zoning district. That highway commercial district wouldn't allow any of this change. The intersection of Kingstown Road and Old Tower Hill Road is an important place, and it is great that it has the bank and that liquor store. As a URI student, I remember that liquor store. That's been there for a long time. That was a big part of my academic experience. The idea isn't that you lose these assets. The idea is that they're accommodated in new buildings, different buildings, right? The idea is that an important intersection like that shouldn't have a parking lot or a gas station, in the worst case scenario. It should have a town square. That's how they would have developed. That's how they would have built back in the day. And that's what the plan is attempting to do. An aerial view of that imagines just allowing the owners of that property to build on more of it. There's still plenty of surface parking. The liquor store and the bank remain, but everything I showed in that visualization just can happen in a very small envelope. Although the plan does allow that property owner, if they can find a new building for the liquor store or a new building for that bank, they can develop more of the property. And so you see this sort of donut of parking in the middle, perimeter buildings around, green spaces at major intersections. That's the formula. We are imagining the Quo Vadis site, right? That's a cool site. That hasn't changed since I was a student. But now what's different about it is it's on a really cool bike path. It used to be an abandoned train track, and now it's a community asset. We're imagining how that site would redevelop. Instead of this used to be the train track, so the buildings turned its back to the old deserted train track, but now it's a bike path. Through this project, we started to invent this thing called bike path-oriented urbanism. So you create these things called regulating plans, and the regulating plan says if you're going to redevelop, face the bike path. It could be a good spot for coffee or an ice cream or for a brewery. This is the kind of thing that the code requires. It requires that the fronts of buildings face streets and public spaces. The code requires new development to happen hand in hand with more paths and continuing paths. Right now, the downtown Old Tower Hill Road area has got a lot of paths. The bike path, the paths over at the Old Mountain Field, the new sort of cycle tracks on Old Tower Hill Road. But the thing is that these aren't connected enough. And so as new development happens, the regulating plan says build more paths, connect to these bike facilities, connect to these sidewalks. That's another important part of connectivity, is requiring. We're allowing the developers to go up a little higher. We're allowing them to build on more of their sites. Well, we're also requiring public benefits, like open space and like connected paths. The job lot could stay there forever. This code doesn't require anyone to do anything. But if they did want to redevelop, and they did want to go a little higher, and they did want to add residential, then there'd be new open space requirements and pathway connection requirements. So that's the thing. Right now, the job lot isn't required to have open space. And if it redevelops, it could continue to just have asphalt. You can't blame the owners. It's cheaper to maintain asphalt than it is to cut grass or to trim trees. But under the new code, there's a new requirement. The aerial view, we're looking down at the job lot space, and it's exactly what is required by the code. It's a box surrounded by parking. It's also not the best neighbor. The street behind it, right now, Holly Street, is looking at the back of that structure. The form-based code allows new redevelopment. It allows you to have multi-story mixed-use buildings, but it also requires these connections, and it requires buildings to face their neighbors. The idea is better neighbors. Now, the Wakefield Mall area, we drove past it today. It's doing great. The parking lot was filled. That could stay like it is forever. It's a community asset. And the Shaw's is an important part of the community. The idea here is that nothing is forced out, but it could take the next step. There's a lot of land. If that owner was allowed to build a parking garage, structured parking, then that frees up a lot of parking spaces, which would create a potential for a main street. Currently looking at the front of the Shaw's of the Wakefield Mall area, it looks something like this. And in the future, it could look something like this. There's a lot we could say about the open space, but we're already going a little bit late. Suffice to say that one important part of open space in South Kingstown, the way it happens in this area is water lands on the asphalt and it drains down to your rivers, and that affects water quality, and it affects the quality of near-shore recreational waters. What we're trying to do with this plan is to require open space, but also all these different kinds of catchment. So there's retention basins, but there's also pervious pavement. There's planting strip trenches, and there's borrow retention swales. The code talks about the variety of different stormwater landscape capture devices that are necessary. All right, so now we're in the last part of the presentation, the code pages themselves. So there's the table of contents, and like I said, except for the administration and the definition section, you can see everything that's proposed in the code that we have. There's a spot that talks about how to use the form-based code, and there's an important piece there that we should talk about. When I say that no one is required to follow the new code, specifically, the way the code reads is this: new construction of a structure intended for occupancy, substantial improvement of a structure is determined by the building official, repair, renovation. Let me try to summarize this. All the structures that are there get to stay, and they can make changes. They can add awnings or signage. They can change their tenant. They can change their parking lot configuration. They could add a tree. Whenever ownership changes, there's going to be changes to the buildings. All of that is fine. But whenever they do this thing called substantial improvement, and that's when the value of the property, the new additions exceed 50% of the value of the structure, then they have to comply with the code. You see what I'm getting at? So if you build something, if your plan is to knock the thing down, you need to build back a multi-story, mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly building with the parking in the back and a new sidewalk. We'll give you extra height. We'll decrease your parking requirement, but you're required to build along the lines of the new form-based code. All right. So if you own the subway and it turns into a Chipotle and it turns into a Qdoba, all of that is fine. But when the day comes that you're tearing it down, then it's got to participate. It's got to add to the urban fabric of the community. Take a look when you get a chance at the maps. There's a chance, that you own a property, that you live within the vicinity of the area. The current code is one size fits all. Pretty much everything is highway commercial. Here, what Pam has done is she's broken it down into 4 different districts, 4 different levels of height, 4 different sets of uses. There is what's called the special requirements map that requires, in some areas, storefronts. Storefronts are necessary for a walkable environment. The Highway 1 area is allowed to be the tallest, and you can see all of the different requirements. And as you get to the Tower Hill Road core area, the heights start to drop down to that 3 to 4 height limit that we were talking about that people felt comfortable with. And as you go further down into the Main Street area or to the edge residential areas, then the heights drop down significantly, down to 1 and 2 stories. So you can have a core that has 4 to 5 stories, but everything kind of ramps down, steps down. So that way when it's a single-family house, next to it will be a single-family house. There's a summary chart which summarizes all of the different regulations, so you don't have to go to every page, but that is over there. Oh, the summary chart. Pam consolidated. So there's the map and there's the summary chart. That talks about all the different setbacks, open space requirements, bulk and intensity regulations. That chart summarizes everything. In the code, you see a lot of pictures. We looked at the historic character of this area, and we found that buildings have bottoms, middles, and tops, and so that would be required of new structures. We find that things are organized into into bays, and so new development, in order to be in keeping with the historic development, would have to have bays. There's opacity requirements, which means there's windows. In order for people to walk, the walk has to be safe, comfortable, and also interesting, and windows make a walk more interesting. We're reviving the lost tradition of building the storefront, and we're teaching, this is a teaching code, and describing how storefronts can be built again. There are cool architectural features not currently allowed, like galleries and forecourts. Things that used to be done routinely in downtowns are now being reintroduced. They're allowed once again. And Pam has a great graphic she drew herself by hand, which puts together all the different elements of the street. The important thing is that the sidewalks be wide and that there be plenty of room for the pedestrian. Once you've established that, you can have on-street dining, you can have the street trees, you can have the parking. It talks about that. The design of the streets, like Pam said, is critical to the project. The parking is reduced. If you reduce the parking, you give the developer more area to develop their buildings, then it's an incentive to build a little bit more. However, parking requirements don't disappear. The reality is, at best, we're going to get 15% of trips walking or using their bikes. 85% are still going to use the cars, and so there has to be requirements for parking. They're lessened, but there's still parking requirements to keep people from parking in the neighborhoods. Parking is in the back. Lighting is required. We're very, very prescriptive. We describe what these buildings are to look like, and then you can look at the zoning map and you can see what is likely to occur. There's a whole variety of building types. I like townhomes. That way people can live every time in construction, every time a wall is shared, every time the building structures are connected, it's less expensive to build, and they sell at lower prices, and that's how we get affordable housing nowadays. Let's skip, there's a whole section over here about street sections, and so every street has room for the cars and is also for pedestrians and for cyclists. There's trees you can see in all of the street sections. Pam has an atlas. Chances are these big areas turn into multiple blocks, and the multiple blocks are going to need new streets, and the new streets have to be designed like main streets. That sort of summarizes that. Civic spaces are required, and it isn't just the remnant of the subdivision process. It isn't just the swampy spot over there. Developers are required to build parks and greens and squares, plazas and playgrounds as appropriate to the context of the area that they're building. This whole idea of small little parks that can appear is something that our form-based codes have been producing for a long time. Pam worked on one in Mobile, Alabama, and along this long strip, kind of like Old Tower Hill Road, it's a difficult walk. These little pocket parks have started to appear, and it's little refuges for pedestrians. There's a design guidelines section which gets into the architecture, and this is a little bit more touchy-feely, less required, more encouraged. This teaches architects and developers about the architectural history of this area, about materials, about the unity, and about the distribution of design elements in accordance with design principles, we could put it that way. That is common in the historic fabric that people like. And it's asking developers, it's encouraging them to build in a way that makes sense for the area. We'll skip ahead a little. There's a part that I think is interesting. South Kingstown has every kind of historical structure, ever. The whole history of American architecture is present here. But there's two more common types, and that's the type that we call coastal. It's based on the shingle style. It's based ultimately on the lighthouses and on the structures along the coast. People like coastal architecture, and so the code encourages that. But also, this is a mill village area, right? The huge mills of Peacedale and the surrounding area, these brick buildings. And so we talk about those too. You can revive these styles. You can reinterpret. You can use materials like the front of the hardware store, which is relatively new, but you can't tell. It looks like it's been there for a long time. That kind of thing is a very important part of this code. All right, so that was a long presentation. We appreciate your patience. There was a lot of material. I think now what we'll do is we'll open this up to question and answer, and then the smaller conversations around the board. It is important to take a look at some of these renderings. The devil is in the details. You should look at these maps. You should grab Pam or myself or one of the members of staff. If your property or your house is on one of these maps, we should have a chance to explain it to you what this means, what your neighbors might be like. So anyway, we want to get to the maps, but first, why don't we do a Q&A? Because I bet there's questions and there's answers that everybody should hear. Yep. Do we have a microphone? Thanks.
I've been to a couple planning and zoning board meetings, and I've actually owned a property right down the street that I was trying to get zoned affordable housing, and it worked out well. And I think that I feel that the planning department here in South Kingstown and the board and the zoning and planning boards are forward thinking, and I really appreciate that. But for instance, my question is, in an R10 zone, which I have right down the street, all the neighbors in a 200-foot radius are notified, rightly so, and there were a lot of people. And it worked out fine. At the same meeting, though, there was a proposal by the owner of Bobby G's, which was across from Benny's and now across from Job Lot, to turn that into a bank. And just recently, the last week, it's been knocked down. There was obviously a notification to all the neighbors of Bobby G's. That's a 200-foot radius, all commercial. Nobody showed up, and that's having a much larger impact on the community and the town than my project. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about, on these commercial properties. How are you going to get the word out to the community that there's something happening, that there's a proposal out there? And finally, do you have buy-in from these corporations that own all these commercial properties? Thank you.
Good questions. Let me answer that generally, and then we can turn it over to staff. So yeah, public notice is a huge part of local planning, right? In some communities where we work, in the interest of expediency, they look to decrease the amount of notice that happens. South Kingstown and planning staff and leadership here was not interested in that, right? So they're not, as part of this project, we're not decreasing awareness. They stay the same. So the notice requirements remain the same, which means notifying people all around. You're right, though, it is still an issue. Every time something changes in a town, it affects everyone. The fact that only people 200 feet or even a quarter mile are notified is sort of it can be a problem in projects like this. I like the idea that in South Kingstown, word gets out. You still have local coverage, you still have local newspapers. Word gets out here about development a little bit more effectively than in other places where I've worked. Staff might want to talk about public notice requirements. The long story short is that this code doesn't change that at all. The current mechanisms they have stay the same. Now, when you talked about buy-in from developers and for property owners, as part of the charrette, we did get to talk to multiple property owners and to developers, and we plan to continue that conversation with them. Were they interested? Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is, right now the current code only allows them to build on 30% of the site, and this code would allow them to build on 60 or 70% of the site. So that calculation alone is of interest to every landowner and developer. still, people have things that are working out just fine. And if you own a property and it's generating perfectly fine income and you don't see any need for change, and inertia is your business model, this code doesn't do anything to push that, right? So we're talking about the possibilities, and some are interested and some are not, to be quite honest. Does staff have anything they want to say about public notice requirements, or no? All right. Hopefully that answers your question. We could talk about that all night. Yep. Let's go. Yes, sir.
So maybe you could say I'm a little impatient. I see a lot of great work's been done, many meetings, but can you lay out a time frame forward on the who, what, when, on how this code can basically come to a decision point of approval?
Let's do that. So Pam showed a slide. She showed a slide in which, we're taking input, we revise the code, and then the full approval process begins in fall. So that's September and October. So then public notice meetings, people getting their 3 minutes of time at the microphone, and the elected officials, the planning commission and the elected officials will vote. We hope to have the code adopted by the end of the year or early next year. So this process has been in the works for a while. We're in the last phases here, so this will happen. And I'll tell you though, the area that we're talking about hasn't changed since I was a college student. The new Starbucks is nice, and there's new tenants, and it's great. But change won't happen overnight. A lot of the reason it hasn't changed is because the development code hasn't been updated since the 1960s. We're fixing that part. But another reason that it hasn't changed is that it's working well for a lot of people. So even when this is adopted, that area will have the strongest tool it's ever had for change. But I can't promise change.
Hi, yes, thank you. This has been super informative. You've spoken really just primarily about all of those commercial areas, and that's been really thorough and interesting. My question for you is, in the residential neighborhoods that border this, I see that some of the codes, if I'm interpreting them correctly, are changing from like single family residences to like multi-story, person residences. How's this going to impact those residential neighborhoods?
Yeah. Yep, that's a great question. We should spend some time looking specifically at the charts. All right, so first let's talk about the purpose. Why? Why would we go into the neighborhoods? Why not just stay in the commercial areas? The reason is because those neighborhoods already have a lot of pressure. As you know, multifamily developers are interested in working in those areas. And you've seen conversions and zoning changes, and you've seen small houses become much bigger. This puts design controls that aren't currently there. There are so many more requirements to make whatever happens in these neighborhoods better neighbors. The setbacks, the step backs, the buffers, the walls, the green that has to be planted, the open space. Development is happening in those areas, and this will make it a better neighbor. It has more control over it. It's a better form. So that's the one thing. One thing is to sort of create a better product in an area where change is inevitable. Now the second idea is that in order for these walkable mixed-use places to work, without a lot of parking lots, people need to be able to walk to them. And so the second idea is that some of those surrounding neighborhoods could go from single family to duplex, or a single family to triplex, to 3 units. If we did that, there would be more people within walking distance to the commercial. If they live close, if they live within a 5-minute walk or a 10-minute walk, they're more likely to walk there. And so it is looking to increase the number of units close to the commercial area. This is a very controversial thing, right? It changes the character of neighborhoods. Make no mistake. If you're a property owner, it might be a great thing for you because you can build an accessory dwelling unit, basically a granny flat in the backyard. I've wanted to do that in my neighborhood forever. That's not allowed in our neighborhood. It's a great thing because you might be able to build a multi-generational house, a house that has another unit attached and your family members can live there. Or you might look at it as something that changes the character of a neighborhood you want to stay single family. And those are just two ways of looking at it. I'd love to talk about your property and specifically how it affects you. I can't tell you how to feel about it. Those are just two perspectives on the matter. I'll tell you this, New Bedford, Massachusetts did a zoning code like this, and they changed the single-family neighborhoods to multifamily, allowing just duplexes, 2 units instead of 1. And the public reaction was negative, and they took it out of the code, all right? So one of the things we're here to do is to get feedback and to learn. And it didn't destroy the code. The code still works, you know, in New Bedford. Our house is in New Bedford. I hope it transforms that area. But it did. It took a much lighter touch on residential. And so that's the question the community should have. Yes, sir?
I think all this is great and wonderful, but I just want to share a different perspective of all this, all right? And what I want to explain by that is it all looks really great, but you also have to think about how it's going to impact a lot of the different things. And I've lived this firsthand, all right? I'm originally from New England. I'm from Maine, actually. But we actually lived in Florida, and we lived in the Florida Panhandle. All right, we saw the impact of this beautification with planned communities from Seaside, Rosemary Beach, Alley's Beach, watercolors. All this is great, it's walkable, it's luxurious, and let me repeat, luxurious, okay? Because the thing is that what once was a beautiful, quiet, charming, coastal community is the reason we moved there from Orlando, Florida, turned into a resort destination luxury environment for the ultra wealthy. Because all of this is going to come at a great cost. You yourself said, you know, homes used to be bought by 26-year-olds. Look around this room. You said now the age is 52. Because we are now gravitating to the fact of being an upper-end retirement community. And the thing is that all of this is going to impact a lot of different things. That everyday people can't live here. I mean, our nurses, our doctors, some of our teachers, firefighters, they work here, but they can't live here, all right? And I hear them talk about it all the time, all right? Because I'm a sub, I do it in the school community, and I hear a lot of conversation about how they'd love to be able to live here. That is a part of a community. When you have everyone who is working, actually living here, it makes you a community. All of those places I just said to you, they're not communities. They are retirement, and they are luxury resort areas for the ultra wealthy to go to. But again, stepping off from that, all of these different, you know, buildings and places for businesses is great. But also what I saw happen was the everyday person could no longer have a business because all of this costs money. Look at the environment we're in now, how expensive it is just to go to the grocery store, pay gas, all those things. This is going to cost a lot of money. So these property developers aren't going to give you free rent. The rent's going to go through the roof. That is why a lot of those places that were great little spots, cafes that we used to go to, no longer could survive because the rent went through the roof because they have to get the money to pay for these developments. So then what happened is you had other companies moving in and supporting and opening up businesses that were no longer locally owned and locally connected. I had an interesting conversation I was never expecting to have at my yard sale. A woman came, putzed around, started talking a little bit about things changing here. And I said, oh, what's changing? She's like, well, she said, you know, from my observations of coming here and so forth, you are the next Hamptons. I said, why do you say that? Because she said several of your businesses that have opened on Main Street are being supported and financed by businesses in the Hampton because they are projecting the South Kingstown, this area, is going to become the new Hamptons. And this right here scares me because it's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to be a retirement community. We're not going to have families living here. We're not going to have the everyday person living here anymore. And that's the thing you have to look at. I'm behind development, I'm behind beautification and so forth, but the thing is, are we willing to pay the price tag of how our community is really going to change, who we're going to be forcing out, and who we are inviting in? Think about it.
Yeah. That was terrific. That was terrific. You and I should go to the Muse and spend 2 hours having this discussion, because this is the kind of thing I talk about all the time. Believe me. As a Rhode Islander, I hate the idea of Rhode Island turning into the Hamptons. Believe me. And also, this is impossible for me to address every aspect of your very, very thoughtful. Just a couple things just come to mind. So we designed one of those communities on 30A. There's Alice Beach, and there's Rosemary Beach, and there's Draper Lake, and that's one of the ones that we designed. So I know that area, and yeah, absolutely. It's a very, we used to call it the Redneck Riviera, right? And it was cool. It was backyard barbecues, and it was outdoor concerts, and it was awesome. And now it's not. Now it's ultra expensive living, and those communities that were designed by the new urbanists like us, they're gated now. And you're not even allowed to go to the beaches anymore. Let me just say about that area, that what happened there is, let me just say that the 38 area that we're talking about, you can see the water. So it's a little different than Tower Hill Road. The areas here where you can see the water, like the Charlestown Beach area or Matunic, I'm not sure there's anything that's ever going to keep those places affordable. Those little houses are going to keep getting bigger. I don't think that it was the form-based coding that made 30A just ultra expensive. I think, unfortunately, it was inevitable. There's like Block Island. I remember when Block Island was cheap, you could buy a house on the west side. That's impossible. Well, they never adopted a form-based code. It was just sort of inevitable. The thing about this area that we're talking about is, I think that if we talk about a transformation that goes from that to that, I don't think that's going to be ultra luxury. I don't think that's going to be seaside. The ocean's too far away. People would be living above shops and stuff. I think this is going to introduce a lot of inexpensive housing to that area. I don't think it's going to introduce a lot of luxury to the area. Gentrification, what we're talking about, is this very, very powerful force which planners are part of, but we're not the whole part. I don't know that this code is going to turn South Kingstown into the Hamptons. But that's just off the top of my head. This is a huge, interesting discussion. I'd love to have this conversation further with you. The best I can do, respecting these people's time. I could go on all night. Don't get me started.
Jason, we have like maybe 3 more hands that we saw. We're going to go here,
Sure.
then to Larry, and then up front, and then potentially we'll open it up to the work session portion.
Great.
Just a quick question. What's the buy-in from the town on, some of these upgrades are going to require utility upgrades. Like you have MacArthur Boulevard, which is all on septic. If you want to put an ADU, you want to put a 3-family, you physically cannot do that on a septic. So what's the buy-in from the town to do like sewers? Are you guys going to bury power lines? I don't see any power lines in your renderings. Like what's the stuff that you can change with the town? I understand you can't change what the owners of the larger properties want to build on.
Yeah, that's right. There's the whole thing that's happening underground that this isn't showing. So that area does have sewer, but the sewer mains would have to get larger. And that area is well supplied with electricity, but yes, we want the power lines to go under. Water capacity would have to increase. Roadways would have to be rebuilt. So there's a very expensive infrastructure investment that this sort of assumes. I will say that what this is also doing is it's increasing the property taxes that are coming to the city, to the town. It's increasing the sales taxes that are coming to the town. So it increases the money that the town has to upgrade those facilities. It also is putting on the developer the need to put in place the infrastructure that's required in most of the cases when you're on private property. So all that I'm saying, so you're right. A lot of this can't happen without a lot of stuff happening underground. This is going to help pay for that stuff, and it's also going to put a lot of it on the back of the developer. On all of Old Tower Hill Road? Is Old Tower Hill Road MacArthur Boulevard? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there are areas that, you're right, absolutely. The conversion of septic to sewer is very expensive, and that might deter a lot of what we've drawn. Yep, absolutely.
Two quick questions. One, this is a great presentation. But as you say, the devil's in the details. Do you have something as a handout with the details in it for us tonight that we can leave here with, or at the very least, copies of your videos, of your pictures?
Yes. So the answer is yes. So this is being recorded. So this is available online soon. Also, the code draft is available online. You can download it.
Question is, I was led to believe this was commercial highway district, but you mentioned Main Street a lot. You showed examples of Main Street, and you said some of this form-based code goes down to Main Street and tapers down to Main Street, and I'm wondering whether this is going to affect all of, not just Old Tower Hill Road and Kingstown Road, but Main Street itself.
Yes, it would. You're right. I wish we had the map. 75% of this is highway commercial, and I was oversimplifying because some of this is not highway commercial. You're right. It does go down Main Street, a segment. You should take a look at the map because it stops at. So it stops at Columbia. Here's the important part. The historic district, the historic Main Street, historic Wakefield that we all think about, this stops short of that. It doesn't affect that. But still, there's still some gorgeous buildings in that area. And that I would hate to see lost.
Does it go from Route 1 to Old Tower, Old Mountain Field?
Yes. It goes along Kingstown Road. It stops at pretty much the bowling alley. We should talk about your concerns for that, just getting the lines right is also part of this exercise. If you felt like we've gone too far on Main Street, then that's something that we could change.
This is a great segue from my comment.
Yes.
Going down to Columbia, I agree with Larry. There are some important factors to consider there, including the historic buildings, or the buildings of great architectural value that are on that stretch of Main Street. So you just mentioned, Jason, that you were concerned about those as well.
Yeah.
So I think I was at one of the earlier sessions where I did bring up the fact that that was a zone of some interest, because those properties are not really that protected, and there would be pressure on them. So the thought I always had was that if your form-based code could somehow protect those properties that exist and introduce, if there's infill that's appropriate. So that's sort of where I've been going on that. And maybe we can talk about that some more.
I love that idea. We were driving down that area today, and what about extending the historic district? What about extending the historic district from Columbia all the way to Holly Street? Has that been considered? Because the reason is because if you extend the historic district and you add the form-based code, then you still have to get a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic District Commission, and they'd protect the older structures, and they'd make sure that the new structures are in keeping with it.
Well, that would be wonderful to talk about in the future. The Main Street District is a National Register Historic District, And the formula or the base for that is really the commercial nature of it, how it evolved over time. That section between Columbia and Holly was more a residential district where the merchants lived.
Yeah.
So it has a little bit of a different historical background
Yeah.
for the National Register district. But that would not, deny us the opportunity to extend historic zoning for that district.
Yeah.
That's an idea that the town would really have to think about, though.
And that's another not local historic district, but we could also look at what's called historic zoning or.
About historical
Oh, you want the district?
zoning, yeah.
All right. So number one, this is on our to-do list of things because this goes through my head all the time. I would hate to see those great structures lost. So we need to work with planning staff and discuss with electeds extending the historic district. There's also other tools that we have. There's a thing called historic zoning, which is not local historic district, which could also work. There's also character areas, and there's conservation district, exactly. Maybe a conservation district might be a lighter touch. Yeah.
And more acceptable. I think also, just so everybody knows, the town through ARPA money, and Jamie's been really responsible for this, we're going to be spending some really nice dollars on 2 significant historical buildings on that stretch. And I think that's coming together right in the next year or so. It's sort of like a good gesture on the part of the town to value that area between Columbia and Holly.
I love it. The next time we have a discussion, code's only 80%. Let's make sure that we've got an answer to that and that we've looked into that seriously. I agree with everything that you just said.
So we'll take one more question and then we'll move to a workshop session. And just so everyone knows, this is part of the process. This isn't, we have this meeting, we go away, we finalize a code, let you know there's a public hearing, it goes before the planning board, town council hears it, there's no opportunities for testimony, and the code's adopted. That's not necessarily the process. This is part of the process. This meeting, there's another draft that will be put out there. There'll potentially be another round of public comments. And then there's a whole public regulatory process to the adoption of the code that we have to follow by state law. So this is just one of the many steps we have to take prior to adoption, and there's a very formal process associated with the actual adoption. It's the town's recognition of a potential change to the zoning code. There's a formal referral to the planning board. The planning board has to evaluate it, make a recommendation to the council. The council has to do what's called an order of notice. The council has to have public hearings, and then prior to any action by the town council. And ultimately, it is a vote of the town council on whether or not the final code or the code with some revision to it gets adopted. So again, this is a step along the way. Stay tuned. We're all going to stick around to answer more questions, but if we can wrap it up with one more. I know we told you we'd like to wrap it up at 8:30. We'll still have 40 minutes or so, and Jason, Pam, myself, Brian, and Jay, we'll stay here a little bit longer so we can be approached by residents and try and answer any other questions you have tonight. So thank you.
Hello. I wanted to ask about your comments. You said you could encourage the developers to adopt a particular style or appearance, but you couldn't require them to. And that was concerning because, it's certainly all about appearance and not being able to have any ability to require materials or appearance. I just wondered if there's any opportunity for that to be considered or to change.
So Jason, I can.
Yep,
so
sure.
I want to say Jason, for part of his presentation, I want to say he threw a lot of information very quickly at you. There's 90 plus pages of code. So this question was actually asked at a town council meeting a few nights ago. We're trying to develop, in essence, guardrails and directions, but those guardrails and directions are regulatory. So although we're not mandating that it has to be hardy planks, 6 inches wide for clapboards, with 4 windows on a front facade that has 60 feet of frontage, we're developing the guardrails to say it has to be similar materials to the terminology Jason's using of seaside coastal. It could be cedar shakes, it could be clapboards, it could be a modern interpretation of a historic architectural vernacular that's in keeping with the traditional architecture in the community. There's an eclectic mix. If you start kind of by Pond Street and you come all the way through Main Street, all the way through Old Tower Hill Road, there is a mix of styles of architecture, including Victorian, Queen Anne, shingle-sided, Federal, Gothic. And then there's, we have a metal-cladded building thrown in that mix. We have a 1950, 1960 building that's painted purple. We're not saying you couldn't paint another building purple, because that's part of the eclectic mix that makes South Kingstown unique. But if you had your druthers, you may not have another metal-cladded building in town versus a shingle-sided or cedar shake-like siding. So again, we're trying to develop the guardrails, but give a little bit of flexibility to the developer to operate within them. But from my perspective, they become part of the regulatory code, but it still allows flexibility within that regulatory code. So it's mandatory, but also provides flexibility. So.
All right, well, they've all been patient, and believe me, I could talk from this microphone all night, but we should let you get back to your regular lives. So we're gonna, like Jamie said, we're gonna be here to answer questions. This is just the beginning of a involvement process. I wanna thank you all for coming and spending time on South Kingstown. It is so dear to my heart. I'm glad it has its guardians. Thank you all. Let's give you all a round of applause just for being here tonight. Thank you all.
Please come, talk to us, ask questions. Continue to look at the boards at the front of the room. We have Post-it notes. You can make comments, ask questions, suggest things we got wrong, things you like that we got right. Thanks.